We like to tell ourselves a very specific story about human history. It is a story of conquest, where we start as vulnerable apes and eventually rise up to bend the natural world to our will. We call this process domestication. It implies we take wild plants and animals, pull them into our domain, and re-engineer them to serve us. We breed dogs to guard our camps. We corral cattle to harvest their milk and meat. In this version of events, we are the absolute masters, and nature is our subject. But the archaeological record reveals a massive flaw in that logic. When humans transitioned from foraging to farming, our quality of life actually plummeted. Early farmers lived shorter, harder lives than their hunter-gatherer ancestors. They were plagued by worse diseases and suffered from severe malnutrition. That forces us to look at the agricultural revolution backward. We did not domesticate wheat. Wheat domesticated us. This map shows wheat's original footprint. 10,000 years ago, it was confined to a tiny range in the Middle East. Today, wheat covers 2.25 million square miles of the globe, spreading across places like the American Great Plains. How does a plant with no brain, no legs, and no weapons pull off the most expansive geographic conquest in the history of the planet? It hacked the behavior of a highly intelligent ape. Wheat manipulated Homo sapiens into dedicating entirely to its survival and reproduction. Wheat doesn't grow well in rocky soil, so our ancestors broke their backs hauling away stones to clear fields. It doesn't like sharing space. That meant spending grueling days under a scorching sun pulling weeds. It's incredibly thirsty, so humans laboriously lugged heavy buckets of water just to keep it hydrated. The human body evolved to climb apple trees and chase gazelles across the savanna. It did not evolve to do static, repetitive farming tasks. We can see the biological consequences in ancient skeletons like this one, which show a sudden explosion of slipped discs, hernias, and severe arthritis. The word domesticate comes from the Latin root domus, which means house. Because wheat demanded constant, year-round care, humans were forced to stop moving. We built permanent settlements and houses directly next to the crops. We didn't bring wheat into our house, it brought us into its. So why would any sane person accept a deal that drastically lowered their individual quality of life and physical health? The answer is that the cold logic of evolution does not measure success by happiness or health. It only cares about DNA. Biological success is determined entirely by how many copies of your DNA you can pass on to the next generation. A diet based heavily on cereals lacked vitamins and ruined human teeth, but cultivating wheat provided massive amounts of raw calories per square mile. That extreme surplus allowed the human species to multiply exponentially. The agricultural revolution was an evolutionary trap. We traded individual human well-being for raw, staggering numbers of species replication. We like to think we are the conscious architects of our destiny. The reality is that we are highly susceptible to being captured and rewired by the very systems we adopt to make life easier. With the trap fully sprung, human populations exploded. Suddenly, thousands of humans were tethered together, living side by side in cramped, permanent, disease-prone villages. But the human brain evolved to operate in tiny nomadic bands of a few dozen people. We were completely biologically unprepared for the intense social friction of living in massive crowds. Intriguing. So how did we survive this crowded new reality without tearing each other apart? To keep thousands of strangers cooperating, humanity had to invent something entirely new. We had to invent myths.